On September 21, 1967, a 19-year-old slipped aboard a Pan Am jet, flashed a counterfeit pilot's badge, and vanished into the clouds, never to be seen again by the airline that day. That audacious move marked the beginning of Frank Abagnale Jr.'s three-year spree of masquerades, in which he forged identities, forged checks, and forged lives, posing as a Pan Am pilot, a Georgia doctor, a Louisiana lawyer, and even a college professor, all before his 21st birthday. Frank Abagnale was born in New York City on April 27, 1948, the son of a French-speaking mother and a French-American father who ran a modest textile business. A bright but restless child, he was thrust into adult responsibilities when his parents' marriage crumbled in 1965. At 16, he dropped out of school, fled his family home, and set out for a future he would design with his own hands, if only he could convince the world that he already possessed those hands. His first con was a simple, yet brilliant, act of deception. After a brief stint as a bank teller, Abagnale discovered the mechanics of the banking system, the way checks were processed, the trust placed in signatures, and the lag between transaction and verification. He began printing his own checks, using a rudimentary hand-made printer and a stolen corporate seal. Within months, he was cashing hundreds of dollars on the backs of unsuspecting businesses, leaving a trail of bewildered accountants and empty accounts. But it was his obsession with the pilot's uniform that propelled his criminal career to legend. In 1967, after stealing a flight suit and a pilot's ID from a flight school, he boarded a Pan Am flight from New York to Miami, presenting himself as a second assistant pilot. The crew, accustomed to the polished confidence of airline staff, welcomed him without question. He spent the next 2 years hopping from one airline to another, British Airways, American Airlines, and even a charter carrier, collecting free meals, lodging, and a salary he never earned. He mastered the lingo, learned the flight routes, and even logged flight hours in a forged logbook, all while cashing forged checks at airports across the United States. When the pilot's hat no longer satisfied his appetite for risk, Abagnale turned his talents toward medicine. In 1968, he walked into a Georgia hospital, brandishing a forged diploma from the University of Georgia School of Medicine. With a confident smile and a stethoscope borrowed from a real intern, he secured a residency in a pediatric department. Over the course of a few months, he performed routine checkups, prescribed medication, and even delivered a baby, though he never performed a surgery. The hospital staff, preoccupied with their own workloads, never verified his credentials. He vanished when a nurse noticed his lack of a medical license, but not before he'd cashed a series of checks under the name Dr. Frank Abagnale. Not content with 2 professions, he adopted a third. Using a forged law school transcript, he passed the Louisiana bar exam on his second attempt and secured a position at the state's Attorney General's office. There, he drafted legal memos, filed motions, and even attended court hearings, all while continuing to cash forged checks under the alias Frank C. Abagnale. His ability to blend into any professional environment stemmed from an uncanny talent for mimicry. He absorbed jargon, observed etiquette, and projected confidence louder than any piece of paper could. By the spring of 1969, the FBI had connected the dots. A string of check frauds, spanning 24 states, bore the same printing style and the same signature, Abagnale's. The Bureau's special agents, led by Agent Joseph "Joe" R. Lentz, mounted a coordinated operation, tracking the suspects' movements through bank records, airline passenger manifests, and hospital payrolls. Their net closed in on a small town in Georgia, where Abagnale, now 21, was posing as a substitute teacher at a community college. The arrest on August 12, 1969, was a quiet affair. Agents knocked on the door of the modest house, found a young man surrounded by forged diplomas, a pilot's cap, and a stack of freshly printed checks. He offered no resistance, perhaps sensing that the game had finally run out of stages. He was taken to the Federal Detention Center in Atlanta, where the courtroom drama that followed would cement his place in criminal lore. The trial, held in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, unfolded in the spring of 1970. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence: counterfeit checks totaling over $2.5 million, forged credentials from 3 distinct professions, and testimonies from airline staff, hospital administrators, and a bewildered lawyer who recognized his own name on a legal brief. The defense, led by a young, eager attorney, argued that Abagnale was a victim of his own youth, a charismatic con artist whose charm had been misinterpreted as competence. They attempted to humanize him, painting a picture of a boy driven by a broken family and a desperate need for approval. The jury, after 2 weeks of deliberation, returned a guilty verdict on all counts: 12 counts of forgery, 5 counts of fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to defraud. The judge, a stern yet fair man named Judge Harold M. Weiss, sentenced Abagnale to 12 years in federal prison, with a recommendation that he serve the full term given the premeditated nature of his crimes. He was also ordered to pay restitution, a sum that would far exceed his earnings from the con. Subscribe to the verdict for more stories like this.